Hello friends, in the midst of a tense calm, I have changed the main subject to relax a bit, although the miracle has different interpretations and mine are positive. Today's information is abundant and each news has several different readings. Opinion article. The blood of Jenaro doesn't liquefy. This could be a harbinger of change. A positive transformation is expected. Too early to give up, says Trump. NASA warns that 7 asteroids are approaching. The Federal Reserve maintains monetary support. Jenna Ellis says this is not over yet. Tense calm before the storm that can be unleashed. Intense military air traffic activity in the US. A US military base in Germany panicked. Warren Buffett warns on economic war in the US. The Congress of Spain gives the green light to the Euthanasia Law. The increase in the arrival of emigrants to Canary Islands is close to 19%. 900%, I mean. Fernando Sánchez Dragó speaks very clearly about the dark agenda. The president will wait until the last minute to invoke the Insurrection Law. Let's start. The blood of Jenaro doesn't liquefy Naples, a bad omen for some, but I interpret it as a positive change. Wednesday was not a good day for believing Neapolitans. The blood of Jenaro, the patron of Naples, did not liquefy despite 2 rounds of prayer by the faithful, which some in the southern Italian cities saw as a harbinger of bad things to come. Meanwhile, to try to scare people more than it already is, NASA has warned that 7 asteroids are approaching the Earth this week, 2 of which will approach at a distance less than which separates us from the Moon, which is located about 385,000 kilometers. The miracle. A vial containing the dried blood of the 4th century martyr is publicly displayed 3 times a year in Naples Cathedral, and the faithful pray for it to be liquefied, known as the miracle of Saint Jenaro. It didn't happen on Wednesday despite hours of prayer in the morning and a special mass in the afternoon. Fewer people than normal were allowed into the cathedral due to sanitary restrictions. Scientists say that the substance inside the sealed vial appears to be dried blood, but they cannot explain why it sometimes turns liquid and sometimes doesn't. What few people know is that this blood was treated by alchemists. Neapolitans are especially nervous if the blood doesn't liquefy on the feast day of the saint, September 19th, but less so on the other 2 days when the vial is taken out for public veneration, the Saturday before the first Sunday of May and December 16. When the blood failed to liquefy on September 19th, 1980 year, a massive earthquake struck southern Italy 2 months later, killing more than 3,000 people. On Wednesday, the city's Cardinal Crescencio Sepe told the faithful not to be too dismayed. If something needs to be melt, it's the hearts of the people, he said. The fame of Saint Jenaro is due on an alleged miracle that takes place every year in Naples on September 19th, the anniversary of his death. The event, which according to tradition has occurred for 400 years, consists of the liquefaction of the saint's blood. On that day, a priest solemnly solemnly exhibits on the altar in front of an urn containing the saint's head and a pole about the size of a pear containing his solidified blood. Those present being to pray, and the blood, normally solid and blackish in color, becomes liquid and reddish and increases in volume. Other cases of blood liquefactions are those of San Pantaleon in the Royal Monastery of the Incarnation of Madrid in Spain, and Saint Charbel Makhlouf in Lebanon. Thames calm. Hours of Thames calm in the US in the face of the more than obvious political storm that is going to unleash in the coming days. You will have noticed that we have been a few hours in which there seems to be a tense calm, and there are very few choices that are raised from one side or the other. After all the intense days that we have been living in the last few weeks after the day election of November 3rd, it's speculated that regardless of who wins, neither candidate would be destined to ultimately lead the restored republic. Nobody knows who the great coalition has chosen for that. Would we have to wait for the new leader 120 days after? It's speculated that regardless of who wins, same paragraph, I am reading the same paragraph. There is a war going on, according to Blade Scott, according to his opinion. I am at Nellis Air Force Base in the flight line to Area 51. I can assure you that the US is under full military base outpost activity. There are not exercise operations. Traffic volume has never been seen here like this before. Friends, there is a war going on, so be prepared. Close dots. Terry Mason thinks that the current question is not determining who was legitimately elected president, but in knowing for how long he will be able to avoid civil war in that country. Far from simple rivalry, the US faces a serious problem of cultural identity that has always been latent since its emergence as a country. In his opinion, report of the day. Updated situation report by Mike Adams. First, 50% of Republicans believe that the president's victory is still likely through court action. Second, Trump could cancel all American national debt to China for China's use of the biological weapons and cyber warfare against the US. Fourth, Linwood tells the Americans to prepare apparently for the troops on the street. Fifth, the 14th Amendment allows the president to strip voters of public office if they violate their oath of office and support rebellion or insurrections. This means that he could instantly win the electoral votes on January 6 simply by invoking the 14th Amendment before that day. Don Carlos de Marbella hopes that on December 24th, coinciding with Christmas Eve, the president will make a public announcement of the return to a dollar backed by gold. But I have a hard time believing it, and I hope I am wrong. On the other hand, one Sabin thinks that we have a globalist crowd that is trying to take control of the world, and its evil is almost incomprehensible to most people. This is not over yet. The president's legal advisor Jenna Ellis on Wednesday urged the American people concerned about the integrity of the elections to have hope in the efforts being made to expose the irregularities. I would only say to people, cheer up, this is not over yet, and we have absolutely every intention of continuing to fight for electoral integrity, Ellis told the American Thought Leaders program of the Epoch Times. The advisor maintains that the president still has time to challenge the election results and that its state legislature still have time to decide which set of votes from the list of grieving delegates to send to Congress on January 6th, the day their electoral college votes count. Ellis is urging the state legislature of the contested states to hold an election session to consider evidence of possible hoax and pass a resolution to send the Republican voter lists. If one state is willing to do this, I think others will follow, she said. The lawyer also believes that it's the responsibility of each citizen to protect free and fair elections, and she points out that there is a group of citizens who want to get to the bottom of all the accusations. However, it's the responsibility of every American, regardless of who they voted for and whether they like the outcome of these elections or not, to put an end to any irregularity, to anarchy, to everything that violates the Constitution, and to ensure the protection of free and fair elections, she said. I think there is a movement among the American people that really wants to get to the bottom of these issues. The lawyer added that each state legislature must also examine its own laws and its own administration to ensure the integrity of the votes. The lawyer believes that Americans have the last word to hold their leaders accountable for their actions, and there are a number of initiatives that can be taken to ensure that politicians are held accountable. We cannot do this not only by contacting them and pressuring them to continue this fight, not only in the media, but also to make sure our elected officials know that this is what we expect of them, that they take the integrity of the elections seriously, said. She also indicated that Americans in some of the disputed states could consider initiating impeachment petitions, a procedure that allows citizens to remove and replace public officials before their term ends. The petition requires a specific number of signatures for a specific period of time. If a valid number of signatures is collected, then a recall election can be held. Different states have different rules for this procedure. It's very complicated. Brief news. Pompeo is in quarantine. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo declared himself in quarantine for having been in contact with a person who tested positive. Pompeo tested negative, but he was under medical surveillance, the department said. We do not know if this news has a second reading. Too early to surrender in the electoral fight. The president told the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell on Wednesday that it is too early to stop fighting to regain the elections. It's too early to give up, he continued. The Republican Party must finally learn to fight, he said. People are angry, he added. Campaign to ask citizens to collaborate in the complaints. The president has published on his Twitter account a video with which he begins a campaign in which, in addition to openly denouncing the anomalies that have occurred in the past elections, he requests to the citizens their collaboration so that they report everything they have seen or simply collaborate with it. Several witnesses speak of election anomalies at the Senate hearing. Witnesses appeared before a Senate hearing on alleged electoral irregularities and testified about a long list of alleged cases of anomalies that occurred in certain states. Some also expressed concern about last-minute changes in electoral laws and other issues that they claimed were unconstitutional. A U.S. military base in Germany panics over an incoming missile false alarm. The military at the U.S. air base in Germany experienced a real scare when they had an alarm about an incoming enemy missile. According to a spokesman, warnings began to sound about an alleged airstrike and to seek coverage, but later it was discovered that it had been a false training alarm, Fox News reported. It is the Ramstein air base in southeastern Germany. It's the headquarters of the US Air Force in Europe. During the incident that took place on December 12th, the sirens on the emergency system sounded to warn of an air raid, but for some reason it was not specified that it was a test alarm and there was no real threat. Economy. The Swiss Public Prosecutor's Office files charges against Credit Suisse Bank for failing to prevent money laundering. The Swiss Attorney General's Office filed charges against one of the largest Swiss banks, Credit Suisse, for not taking the necessary measures to prevent money laundering of assets belonging to a Bulgarian criminal group. The Federal Reserve maintains monetary support. The U.S. Federal Reserve kept interest rates unchanged this Wednesday, close to 0% amid the acute health crisis. The U.S. Central Bank, in this meeting with the President, left the reference rate in the range of between 0% and 0.25%, a level at which it has been since March of this year, when it applied to rate cuts by the effects of the health crisis on the U.S. economy. Negative interest rates trigger interest on investment in gold. The price of an ounce has increased by 22% in 2020, while fixed income is below zero, and most European stock exchanges lose between 7% and 15%. 2020 will go down in history as one of the years of greatest volatility in the markets. With fixed income and negative rates in 60% of the debt issues of large economies, gold is presented as one of the alternatives to find profitability on investments. Anyone who bought gold at the end of the last year and sold it today would have obtained a 22% return. An ounce of gold was bought on Tuesday at about $1,850, which is the equivalent of talking about 59,500 per kilogram. On December 30th, 2019, an ounce of gold was purchased for $1,518 and a kilo for just under $49,000. Warren Buffett warns about of an economic war in the US. The president of the holding company Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett, urged Congress to expand aid to small businesses. He stressed that because of the health crisis, it is difficult for them to survive and they need government funding. It's an economic war, Buffett told CNBC during a telephone interview about what happened to small businesses during this crisis. The window to apply for loans from the program closed earlier this year, although funds have not yet been depleted. However, Congress has been at a standstill for months in its negotiations for the government to approve more loans. Michelle Bachelet wants to create a society with Masonic principles. The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, recently assured that after the health crisis in the world, it is necessary a new social contract with a new era. For the one that is needed Masonic principles. According to Michelle Bachelet, we need a new social contract with Masonic principles. If they want me to sign a social contract, I don't say anything except my own declaration of sovereignty and personal independence. Spain. The Spanish Congress gives the green light to the Euthanasia Law. It will become the 6th country in the world to incorporate this rule into its legislation, once the Senate finally approves it. An extraordinary plenary session of the Spanish Congress of Deputies has approved this Thursday, by an absolute majority, the proposal for an organic law to regulate euthanasia, a rule that regulates the right of patients with serious and incurable or disabling diseases to request help to die. It's to say, they can come to your house to put the syringe on you. The writer Fernando Sánchez Dragó speaks clearly in dots. If there is a conclusion we reached after the months that we have been suffering from the dictatorial measures of the government with the accuse of the supposed pathogen, it is that they cannot be more blatant. There is no dissimulation. They have an agenda marked with clear intentions of submission, destruction and misery that who has not yet realized them should make them see it. Another news. The increase in the arrival of emigrants to the Canary Islands is close to 900% compared to 2019, after 2,452 people arrived in 2020. On this year, I mean. The increase in the arrival of emigrants to the Canary Islands reaches 889% compared to the previous years, according to the figures collected by the Ministry of the Interior between January 1st and December 15th. In this period, 21,452 people arrived in the archipelago in boats, compared to the 2,960 registered a year ago. The Spanish police, detained an Islamist in Madrid who wanted to be the best spinner of the Islamic State. He lived occupying buildings to avoid being detected by the security forces. He has shown his desire to travel to Syria to join the jihadist group. Agents of the national police have arrested in the last hours a Spanish convert who used social networks both to glorify violent Islamism and to self-indoctrinate him, which had caused a rapid process of radicalization. The operation took place in the town of Las Rozas, located about 30 kilometers from Madrid, in a northwesterly direction. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, friends.